When it comes to Batman games, the majority of people think of the Arkham series. Though the Arkham games were all great in their own way, they sadly overshadowed another great Batman game, Batman Telltale series. Telltale games have always been known for making great decision-based emotional games with a perfect story. So getting the rights to make a game based on one of the most complex and iconic characters of comic history would sound like a dream come true. But upon release, it received mixed reviews, and the amazing story it had to offer was completely overlooked by many. At the time of this video's making, the game is 6 years old and I'm kind of late to the party here. But I would like to argue now that the Batman made people appreciate a fresh take on the Caped Crusader, it would be a perfect time to talk about what made Batman the Telltale series great. So think of this video as a court session, and I'm here to prove that Batman the Telltale series is criminally underrated. Before talking about the Batman part in Batman Telltale series, we should talk about the Telltale part. If you're not familiar with the Telltale format, their games are choice-driven episodic point-and-click adventures. The gameplay is simple because the main focus of these games are delivering well-written stories with the decision input from the player. But since this game is about Batman, Telltale games have to somehow take the gameplay up a notch. Still, the gameplay is pretty simple, and obviously shouldn't be compared to the Arkham games. The combat is made up of quick-time events, which on paper sounds terrible and annoying, but in this case it's played for a cinematic effect, and ultimately makes the game more interactable. From the beginning, it's clear that this game understands Batman, what he stands for, and what he believes in, and you as the player can shape your perfect Batman. Through combat and your decisions, you can choose what sort of hero you want to be. You can be a just and incorruptible symbol of hope for the people of Gotham, but at the cost of losing your fear factor with the criminals, or a brutal and menacing vigilante at the cost of your reputation with Jim Gordon.
Jim, listen.
No, listen to me. The excessive violence, it can't go on.
Your choices directly influence the relationships you build with the characters around you, leading to different outcomes and situations. Telltale games went out of their way to put as much of their creative input as they can into this game. The way they reinterpreted and changed a lot of events and characters makes it a fresh take on the Batman mythos. An example of this change would be the creative input from Telltale games to separate the character Batman from Bruce Wayne. Obviously, this is nothing new and has been done before, but never to the same extent as this game did. Bruce Wayne was always the mask, and Batman was the true face of the character. But in this case, they are both masks worn by us, to benefit the city in the way that we see fitting. In many situations, the game forces you to choose between Bruce Wayne or the Batman, each with their own consequences. Choosing one over the other may result in the other one losing their value to the public. So choose wisely. Season 1 takes place in the early days of Batman. Early enough so we can watch Batman's villains turn into the characters we know and love, but late enough so that it skips over Batman's origin story. Things start off strong with Bruce stitching himself up after stopping a robbery to attend to Harvey Dent's fundraiser, perfectly showing the duality of the character. The plot of Season 1 is about Batman trying to figure out the plans of a rising threat named the Children of Arkham, while battling with his own personal issues. While looking for answers, Bruce finds something that shakes him to his core and makes him doubt his mission. The people he looked up to his whole life were just as bad as the criminals he puts behind bars. The Waynes were corrupted. This is probably the best example of Telltale's creative twists on the mythos of Batman, changing the beloved goody two-shoes Waynes that we've seen time and time again to something creative. It's a change no one saw coming, and it's not just shock for the sake of shock value. The entire game is structured around the corruption of Gotham and the people that suffered from it. What makes this twist so good is how it affects the plot in a meaningful way that wasn't explored before. This humanizes Batman to a level I've never seen. As the audience realize this truth alongside with Batman, they truly feel connected to his character, and the game perfectly handles these characters. The character of Selena Kyle and the tragedy of Harvey Dent were showcased perfectly in this game. Going in, the player knows the fate of Harvey Dent. We all know what all this friendship is leading up to, but still, it's heartbreaking when it eventually happens. As you spend the whole game trying to stop this from happening, eventually when the choice comes, you can't stop it. Despite how good Season 1 is, there's a couple of issues holding it back. After its release, Batman Telltale suffered from a lot of technical issues, like visual bugs and stutters. Telltale fixed a lot of these issues, but players still seem to be experiencing them to some extent. And while I didn't personally encounter any visual problems, I did encounter a couple of bugs here and there. But it wasn't the bugs that I cared about. The real problem with Season 1 for me was the main villains, Penguin and Lady Arkham. Telltale Games reimagined Penguin as a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, who had a rough childhood because of his parents' death, which happened at the hands of Thomas Wayne. This is a great setup for a villain, but the execution wasn't as great. Throughout the entire season, Penguin is an asshole, and regardless of the choices you make, he remains an asshole till the end. With that setup, Telltale Games could have expanded on the whole childhood friends aspect and made a friend-turned-foe relationship. But instead, he's just an asshole without any emotional depth to him. His character is even made worse because of the inclusion of Lady Arkham. Lady Arkham is the mysterious leader of the Children of Arkham and the main villain of the season. At the end, it's revealed that she was, spoiler alert, Vicky Vale all along. She also lost her parents because of Thomas Wayne and now she wants revenge. She shares the exact motivation as Penguin, but lacks the whole childhood friend thing to make her a more sympathetic character. The twist reveal of her identity is also pretty pointless, considering it adds nothing to the story other than highlighting suffering at the hands of Thomas Wayne, which was already done with Penguin. Removing her from the story and replacing it with a better, well-written version of Penguin would have worked a lot better. But overall, the positives still outweigh the negatives by a lot. As good as the first season was, Season 2 is absolutely fantastic. It takes all of the issues that Season 1 had and fixes them, while improving over the things it did right to begin with. The mediocre villains of Season 1 are instead replaced with well-written characters that feel human. Not only is the game more visually appealing, but the visual bugs are also completely gone. A common criticism for Telltale Games is how at the end of their games your choices lead to the same outcome. But that's not the case with Season 2. Your choices have huge consequences with multiple outcomes for every character. Telltale Games goes even crazier with their creativity and puts their twists and turns onto the characters that we've seen for decades and delivers a fresh take on them. Even the simple things like the quick time event combat system is now a little more varied, and the cinematic aspect of them is dialed up to 100. The plot of Season 2 is about Batman trying to figure out the plans of a rising threat named the Pact, which on paper sounds exactly like the plot of Season 1, but in actuality it's a lot better. The Pact is a group of iconic Batman villains, such as Bane, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler, Harley Quinn, and the Joker. But instead of it being a mysterious group out for vengeance, they are a bunch of broken people trying to find the cure to their disease. The Pact is smarter and stronger than Batman, so instead of it facing them head on, Bruce Wayne has to manipulate his way into the Pact and figure out their plans and sabotage them from the inside, which is a clever twist on the plot of Season 1. When we manipulate our way into the Pact, we begin to befriend these villains and feel their humanity, but at the same time we need to stop their crimes. We are doing what's best for Gotham, but it comes at the cost of questioning our morality. Season 2 delivers a unique interpretation on the Batman villains we know and love, such as the Joker. Hands down one of the best versions of the Joker I've seen in a while. Or should I say, John Doe. With all of the Jokers I've seen over the years, the character got very boring for me. But John Doe is an exception. Instead of being a cruel psychopath, he is a mentally ill man with no memory of his previous life outside of Arkham. He isn't evil incarnate. He just happened to accidentally be at the wrong place at the wrong time to join the Pact. He means well, but his lack of social skills makes him look weird and rude. Something that I really liked about John was that he genuinely felt like a mentally unstable man, and because of that I kind of felt bad for him. John takes a liking to Bruce and tries his hardest to befriend him. Because he looks up to us, he is easily influenced by our actions. So we try to be a good role model for him to take him under our wing so he wouldn't become the Joker. But since we have to use him and manipulate him to join the pact, we continuously have to hurt him. As your actions and decisions directly influence the outcome of your relationship with him, at the end you are completely responsible for how he turns out. And when the truth is out, he won't take it lightly.
You've been using me from the start! At least have the decency to admit it! The least you can do is come clean about that!
Okay. Maybe I have been using you.
What the heck? You're supposed to be on my side!
It's tragic how we try to stop him from becoming the Joker the whole game, but at the end it's our own decisions that leads to his transformation. The lives he takes and the pain and suffering he causes are now directly our fault. As the Joker terrorized Gotham, I couldn't help but feel responsible. His character was so well written that I genuinely felt the connection we had as two friends completely broken. Even though our friendship started as a means to join the pact, he started to grow on me and I actually felt sorry for him. At the end, when I was desperately trying to stop his plans, I was angry at myself for my choices. The final fight scene with him is honestly one of the strongest emotional moments I've seen in any Batman media. As we desperately try to reason with him to stop, we start to realize how far he's fallen. We manipulated him and took advantage of his friendship. And Joker will never forget that.
Remember that night? Drinking frappes under the stars. You dishing out advice about the ladies. It was perfect. You know, some part of me always knew. Someone like you, you'd never really be friends with someone like me. But I wanted to believe it so badly. We had some good times, didn't we, Bruce? It wasn't all bad.
Yeah, sure. Some of it was fun.
I hope you'll look at that scar and remember those good times.
After defeating the Joker and coming back to Wayne Manor, we are faced with one last punch in the gut from Telltale. Alfred is leaving.
I was going to write a note, but I'm not a coward. At least I don't want to be. Not anymore. Then again, this won't be the first time I've found my courage in a single malt.
Courage for what?
Saying goodbye.
This is what the Thomas Wayne twist was leading up to since season 1. Alfred felt powerless to stop Thomas, and now he feels powerless to stop us.
Your father was driven by an obsession, by a need to control. He rushed headlong into the darkness, thinking himself invincible, oblivious to the cost. Just like you.
Not like me. I chase that darkness away.
And yet, history is repeating itself. I'm more certain of that with every passing day.
Okay, maybe I am more like my father than I want to admit, but our paths are different.
Can't you see? The paths may diverge, but they end in the same place. face down in an alley, shot in the dark by criminals in some godforsaken corner of Gotham. I won't be witness to that. I won't bury you, too. I stood by and did nothing while Thomas destroyed himself, along with everything he loved. I enabled him, like I'd been enabling you. Realizing this, I've never felt so helpless. I wanted things to be different for you, my boy. You deserved a better life than the one I gave you.
Throughout the game, we are faced with a question: is Batman worth it?
Back in the day, it was only the gangsters you had to worry about. Now, cops are cut open and filled with carnival toys. Makes you wonder. How'd we get here? I look around, the streets are the same. The only real difference is Batman.
This seems easy to answer at first, but thinking back on it, things aren't as black and white as you might think. At the end, when Alfred is leaving, we are faced with one last choice. Let Alfred go, or let Batman go. So once again, is Batman worth it? Being Batman isn't easy. There will always be casualties and people will always suffer. The choices you have to make are never easy. But at least the choice is yours.